Do they really hate us for our freedom? And are anti-war people weak? Plus, American exceptionalism. As for as for why people hate the United States of America, and to a degree the United Kingdom, France, etc., here's an excerpt from Chat with Ryan Dawson.
Definitely not an idiot. I mean, you could say lunatic or whatever, but he was not an idiot. And I think a lot of people we understand a lot more now about PTSD. And I think a lot of people from World War One, Hitler was blinded, and people. I mean, imagine living in trenches for years, like years, dude. That's your life for that part of your life. Like that had to have a huge psychological impact on everyone on both sides. Like no one look. You just can't like even like if I could talk about ISIS. I'm not pro ISIS. You know, all my work is against these Wahhabi fanatics and stuff. But I will put myself in the other person's shoes and say, imagine you're an Iraqi kid and someone comes up and like beats up your dad in front of you, which is so humiliating and demasculating. And then, you know, the rape, just the torture, Abu Ghraib, seeing, you know, your soldiers, your men stripped naked, humiliated, beaten, Fallujah, firebombs, all these civilians that are murdered, your leader killed, all that. And then sanctions where you watched 800,000 children starve to death all throughout the 90s. So you're seeing kids with the ribs poking out. You're seeing people die of starvation. Then they come back based completely on lies and blow up your cities and put you back in the Stone Age and ruin your drinking water and, you know, all the things we did to Iraq. And you're say you're like 11 years old and you grow up, by the time you're 18, how do you feel? Especially if you're uneducated on top of that. Are you going to be attracted to an Islamic militant group? You bet your ass. It's like this shit we do has predictable consequences. Of course there's an ISIS. Why wouldn't there be? Look at what you did. You starved all those kids. You raped, you beat, you murdered, you firebombed, you hit them with chemical weapons. What the fuck you think they're going to do? Shake your hand? And I can see, you know, stealing land from Germany after World War One and the Treaty of Versailles and how punishing it was. Why you end up with Nazis? That doesn't justify Nazis or ISIS or anything else. But for fuck's sake, you have to look at it and see, like, hey, were they just brainwashed and hate people for nothing out of the blue, or did something happen first? And God, you just can't say that, can you? You know, like if you hadn't had Gulf War One and you hadn't had all the sanctions and you didn't invade a second time and you didn't put sanctions on Iran and you hadn't covertly supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria all through Assad's father's age and da 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 da, then we wouldn't be where we are. If you didn't kill the Gaddafi and hand the country over to Al Qaeda, there wouldn't be all these African refugees in Europe. Like, they don't understand cause and effect because it's this exceptionalism. That's, you know, the hell with check your privilege, check your exceptionalism. American and European exceptionalism, they're the ultimate Dendu. Oh, we didn't do nothing wrong. Like, well, yeah, you did. And now Johnny's come home. You know, the boomerang is on its way back. And this is what happens when you bomb and destabilize areas. Like, you know, this is your own Frankenstein. You did this to yourself. It is not cultural genocide. It is cultural suicide because your governments created this mess and your governments sustain this mess. That's a nuanced view. And that does not at all promote any of these terrorist groups, migrants, and then raping or anything like that. It's all terrible, but it's also predictable. And that's why you have, not you, but, you know, Europe, the United States, we have to change our behavior and policies if we don't want the backlash. I mean, that's like simple stuff a 3-year-old understands. He hit me. Did you hit him first? Yeah. Well, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Simple.
Right. And that's
Bet your ass we're gonna have more terrorists from Yemen in the future after what's been done.
Imagine for a moment that somewhere in the middle of Texas there was a large foreign military base, say Chinese or Russian. Imagine that thousands of armed foreign troops were constantly patrolling American streets in military vehicles. Imagine they were here under the auspices of keeping us safe, or promoting democracy, or protecting their strategic interests. Imagine that they operated outside of U.S. law and that the Constitution did not apply to them. Imagine that every now and then they made mistakes or acted on bad information and accidentally killed or terrorized innocent Americans, including women and children, most of the time with little or no repercussions or consequences. Imagine that they set up checkpoints on our soil and routinely searched and ransacked entire neighborhoods of homes. Imagine if Americans were fearful of these foreign troops and overwhelmingly thought America would be better off without their presence. Imagine if some Americans were so angry about them being in Texas that they actually joined together to fight them off in defense of our soil and sovereignty because leadership in government refused or were unable to do so. Imagine that those Americans were labeled terrorists or insurgents for their defensive actions and routinely killed or captured or tortured by the foreign troops on our land. Imagine that the occupiers' attitude was that if they just killed enough Americans, the resistance would stop. But instead, for every American killed, 10 more would take up arms against them, resulting in perpetual bloodshed. Imagine if most of the citizens of the foreign land also wanted these troops to return home. Imagine if they elected a leader who promised to bring them home and put an end to this horror. Imagine if that leader changed his mind once he took office. The reality is that our military presence on foreign soil is as offensive to the people that live there as armed Chinese troops would be if they were stationed in Texas. Shutting down military bases
and ceasing to deal with other nations with threats and violence is not isolationism. It is the opposite. Opening ourselves up to friendship, honest trade, and diplomacy is the foreign policy of peace and prosperity. It is the only foreign policy that will not bankrupt us in the short order, as our current actions most definitely will. I share the disappointment of the American people in the foreign policy rhetoric coming from the administration. The sad thing is, our foreign policy will change eventually, as Rome's did, when all budgetary and monetary tricks to fund it are exhausted.
According to our own CIA, our meddling in the Middle East was the prime motivation for the horrific attacks on 9/11. But instead of reevaluating our foreign policy, we have simply escalated it. We had a right to go after those responsible for 9/11, to be sure, but why do so many Americans feel as if we have a right to a military presence in some 160 countries when we wouldn't stand for even one foreign military base on our soil for any reason? These are not embassies, mind you. These are military installations. The new administration is not materially changing anything about this. Shuffling troops around and playing with semantics does not accomplish the goals of the American people, who simply want our men and women home. 50,000 troops left in Iraq is not conducive to peace any more than 50,000 Russian soldiers would be in the United States. But this is referring to the Obama administration, the Obama era. I'll explain in another point how foreign interventionism causes a lot of problems down the line. I've also seen the assertion that anti-war people are weak, which explains their anti-war views. Quickie, Cowardly Lion, by Shane Killian. Paul has also said something to the effect of, maybe the toughest guys are the ones who act with the most self-restraint. And remember that Ron Paul did serve in the military, in a war he did not even agree with, while a strong majority of you did not serve, period. I have three words for individuals who never served in the military, but support conscription, the draft. Shame on you. He also got much of his 2012 campaign contributions from members of the United States military. Who's the real tough guy now, eh? As much as I have slammed to the left for their weakness, meekness, and other negative qualities, two of the biggest problems I have with the right is how macho they try to be, and even more so, lack of humility, along with unwillingness to swallow their pride, whether it be tribal or national. Having an aggressive foreign policy does not even make us safer. The video, Foreign Policy Arrogance Undermines Our National Security, explains this. If you agree with this message, please go to antiwar.substack.com/p/sources is for more sources, is along with links to articles and videos to oppose war and support world peace. Here's my social media link tree, which I ask that you keep archive. You keep the link and archive my content, and please, to make sure that YouTube, Google does not monetize this video.
Listen, you son of a bitch. What the fuck's your problem? You want to sit here and say that I'm a goddamn fucking Russian? You get in my face with that, I'll beat your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch. You piece of shit. You fucking goddamn fucker. Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Get that through your goddamn fucking head. Stop pushing your shit. You're the people that have fucked this country over and gang raped the shit out of it and lost an election. So stop shooting your mouth off claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch? Fill your hand. I'm sorry, but I'm done. You start calling me a foreign agent, those are fucking fighting words. Excuse me.
Because as Google does not believe in free speech, along with its ties to BlackRock and Oracle. Oracle collects Oracle data mines info on billions of people, and BlackRock is crushing small businesses. Is to try to create a monopoly for itself. I don't want to give Google ad revenue.